In 1974, a bank teller could tell how disciplined you were just by flipping open your passbook. Every stamped deposit was a small badge of honor. Today we swipe, tap, and finance a pair of sneakers over 4 payments and call it normal. But here is the twist. The people who raised us built real wealth on rules so simple they sound almost quaint now. Number 4 on this list was so effective that banks quietly stopped teaching it, because a customer who follows it is a customer they cannot lend to. And number 1 is the single sentence that separated the families who retired comfortable from the families who never caught up. Before we count down, hit that subscribe button, because at least 3 of these rules could change how you handle your next paycheck. Let us begin. Number 20. Save the string, the jars, and the rubber bands. Every kitchen your grandmother ran had a drawer that rattled. Inside were rubber bands from the newspaper, twist ties, folded squares of used aluminum foil smoothed flat by hand, and a coffee can heavy with bent nails and orphaned screws. Nothing that entered the house left it until it had earned its keep twice. A glass mayonnaise jar became a drinking glass, then a container for bacon grease, then storage for buttons. In 1955, a box of aluminum foil cost around a quarter, and a quarter was real money when the average factory wage hovered near $80 a week. So she washed the foil, dried it over the faucet, and used it again. People roll their eyes at this now, tossing zip-top bags after one sandwich. But the woman who saved string was not cheap. She simply understood a truth we lost. Every small waste, repeated 1,000 times a year, becomes a leak in the boat. She plugged the leaks. That drawer was not clutter. It was a philosophy, rattling every time you opened it. Number 19. Mend it, don't replace it. There was a wooden egg in the sewing basket, smooth and pale, and it existed for one reason. You slipped it inside a sock with a hole in the heel and darned the wool back together in a tight little web that would last another winter. A spool of thread cost a nickel. A new pair of work socks cost far more, and a man went through them fast on a factory floor. So Saturday nights, the radio playing low, mothers and grandmothers sat with a needle and rebuilt the family's wardrobe stitch by stitch. Buttons were sewn back on before they finished falling off. Hems were let down as children grew, the old crease still faintly visible. A torn seam was a 15-minute job, not a reason to drive to the store. Oral histories from the 1950s recall children who never owned a garment that had not been repaired at least once. We buy fast fashion now and throw it out when a button pops. Back then, the ability to mend was quiet financial armor, and everyone wore it. Number 18. The change jar on the dresser. Every night your father emptied his pockets onto the dresser, and the coins went into a jar, a big one, usually glass, sometimes an old pickle jar with a label scrubbed off. It filled slowly, dimes and quarters and the occasional heavy silver dollar, and nobody touched it. This was not spending money. This was the vacation fund, the Christmas fund, the new tire fund. Twice a year the jar came down. The coins were rolled into paper sleeves at the kitchen table, and the family counted their invisible savings. $40, $60, once, memorably, over 100. It felt like finding treasure, except they had built it themselves, one forgotten nickel at a time. The genius was that the money vanished before it could be spent. Loose change is the easiest money in the world to fritter away on gum and soda, so they made it disappear into glass. We deposit our coins into apps that round up now and feel modern. But the jar did the same job, and you could hear it getting heavier. Number 17. Grow what you can in the backyard. The victory gardens of the war never fully went away. Well into the 1970s, a good portion of the American backyard was tomatoes, green beans, and squash, with a row of corn along the fence if the lot was big enough. A packet of seeds cost a dime and returned a summer's worth of vegetables. Your grandmother canned the surplus in mason jars, and the basement shelves filled with tomatoes and pickles and peaches that carried the family clear through winter when produce was scarce and dear. The math was brutal in the best way. A single tomato plant costing pennies produced 20 pounds of tomatoes that would have cost real dollars at the A&P. Children were sent out to pull weeds and shell peas on the back porch, learning without being told that food came from work, not just a cart. We buy hydroponic lettuce in plastic clamshells now and let half of it rot. That garden was a grocery store you owned, and it paid you in August. Number 16. Brown bag every lunch. Here is where the small money hides. The lunch pail was sacred, packed the night before, a thermos of coffee or soup wedged beside a sandwich wrapped in that reused wax paper. Buying lunch was practically unthinkable. Why hand a diner $1 for a sandwich you could make at home for 15 cents? A man who packed his lunch every working day saved what added up over a year to a serious sum, enough for a new suit or a chunk of the property tax. The women knew the arithmetic cold. Leftover roast became Monday's sandwich. The heel of the bread went to no waste. A hard-boiled egg, an apple from the tree, a slice of homemade cake, and lunch was handled. Today, the average worker spends a small fortune a year on bought lunches and calls it a treat they deserve. Our grandparents treated the daily lunch as the single most reliable place to plug a leak because it repeated 250 times a year. Small, boring, and relentless. That was the whole point. Number 15. The Christmas Club account. First pattern break. Here is where the banks were actually on your side for a while. Starting in the early 20th century and booming for decades, nearly every bank offered a Christmas Club account. You committed to depositing a small fixed amount every single week, maybe $2, maybe $5, and you could not withdraw it until November. Then the bank mailed you a check right before the holidays, and you did your Christmas shopping in cash. No January credit card hangover. No debt dragged into the new year. The account often paid little or no interest, and financial writers today sniff at that. But they miss the point entirely. The Christmas Club was never about interest. It was about forced discipline for people who knew they would spend the money if they could reach it. A family put 50 cents a week aside and had a debt-free Christmas. Banks eventually killed these accounts because credit cards were far more profitable for them. Think about that. They replaced a savings habit with a debt habit, and we thank them for the convenience. Number 14. Layaway, not credit. Before you owned it, you earned it. If your mother wanted a winter coat or a set of dishes she could not pay for that day, she did not finance it. She put it on layaway. The store tucked the item in the back with her name on a tag. She paid a few dollars toward it every week or two, and when the final payment landed, she carried it home free and clear. It cost nothing extra. No interest, no fees, just patience. A $20 coat became 5 weeks of $4 payments, and by the time she wore it, it was truly hers. There was even a strange joy in it. The anticipation of walking in with the last payment and watching the clerk pull your coat off the rack. Layaway taught a lesson. Credit erased. You waited for what you wanted, and the waiting cost you nothing but time. Now we get the coat today and pay for it for a year, and somewhere along the way we decided that was progress. Number 13. Balance the checkbook to the penny. The kitchen table on the first of the month meant one thing. The checkbook came out, the bank statement beside it, and every single transaction was reconciled by hand until the two numbers matched exactly. Not close, exactly. If it was off by 11 cents, your father hunted that 11 cents like a bloodhound, because being off by 11 cents meant he did not actually know where his money was. It was a monthly ritual of total honesty. You wrote down every check the moment you tore it out. You subtracted it right there in the register, and you always knew to the dollar what you truly had. Nobody overdrew an account by accident, because there were no accidents. There was only the register and the arithmetic and the discipline to face it. We have apps that show a balance now, and yet somehow we are more surprised by our own spending than they ever were. That balance checkbook was not a chore. It was a person looking their money square in the eye once a month and refusing to lie to themselves. Number 12. Buy a used car with cash and drive it into the ground. Second pattern break. Controversy incoming, because this one makes car salesmen wince. The old rule was ironclad. You never, ever borrowed money to buy a car that was losing value the second you drove it off the lot. You saved up. You bought a solid used car with cash, and then you drove it for 12 years, 15 if the engine held. Your uncle knew a mechanic, or he was the mechanic, changing his own oil in the driveway on Sunday and rotating his own tires. A car was transportation, not a personality. It got you to work, and it got the kids to church. And when it finally died, you had already saved for the next one because you never had a car payment in the first place. The industry needs you to believe a new car every few years is normal, financed forever, always one payment behind. Your grandfather would have called that insanity. He bought the boring sedan, paid cash, and put the money he did not spend on payments into the bank instead. Number 11. Buy it once, buy it for life. There was a cast iron skillet in that kitchen older than everyone eating out of it. There were leather boots resold 3 times, a wool coat that outlasted 2 decades, hand tools with wooden handles worn smooth by a father and then a son. The rule was simple, and it ran against everything modern retail wants. You bought the best quality you could afford one time, and then it lasted so long that it became the cheapest thing you ever owned. A cheap $10 pan replaced every 2 years costs more than a good $30 pan that outlives you. Your grandparents did the long math instinctively. They saved a little longer, bought the thing that was built to last, and then they cared for it, oiled the iron, polished the leather, sharpened the blade. We buy disposable now, 3 cheap versions of everything, and wonder where the money went. The old skillet knows. It is still in a family kitchen somewhere, seasoned black, cooking dinner, having long ago paid for itself 100 times over. Number 10. Sleep on it, the 30-day rule. When something expensive tempted them, they did not buy it. They waited. The old wisdom held that any big purchase should sit for 30 days before you handed over $1. And more often than not, the wanting simply faded. The television that seemed essential on Saturday looked like a foolish splurge by the following Friday. Once, the shine wore off, and the household budget stared back. This was the natural enemy of the impulse buy, and it saved fortunes. If you still wanted the item after a month, and it fit the plan, you bought it with a clear conscience. If you had forgotten it, you had just saved yourself the money and the regret. Our grandparents built a wall of time between the urge and the wallet, and most bad purchases could not survive the wait. Today, the entire economy is engineered to erase that wall. One-click buttons and same-day delivery and lightning deals that end in an hour. The 30-day rule was armor against exactly that pressure, decades before anyone knew we would need it this badly. Number 9. Green stamps, coupons, and working the rewards. Saturday morning meant the newspaper spread across the table and the scissors out, clipping coupons for the week's shopping trip like it was a part-time job, because in a sense it was. And then there were the trading stamps. S and H green stamps were handed out at the grocery store and the gas station, and you licked them into little booklets, page after page, saving them for months. When you had enough, you carried them to the redemption center and traded them for a toaster, a lamp, a set of luggage, without spending a cent of cash. Whole households ran on this. Your mother knew which store gave double stamps on Wednesdays. She planned the week around the sales flyer. None of it was glamorous, and all of it worked. She squeezed a real, measurable discount out of money she was going to spend anyway. We have points and cashback apps now that do a paler version of the same thing, mostly ignored. She never ignored a stamp. Every booklet was a small appliance she got for the price of a little patience. Number 8, keep the pantry full. Stock up when it's cheap. Third pattern break. Here is a rule that looks like spending but is actually saving. The pantry was never bare. When flour went on sale, you bought extra. When the butcher marked down meat, you filled the deep freeze in the basement. That heavy chest freezer humming away, packed with the summer garden and the fall sale prices. The idea was to buy things when they were cheap, not when you were desperate, because desperation always pays full price. A family that stocked up on canned goods and staples during a sale rode out lean weeks without ever running to the store at the worst possible moment. There was a security in those full shelves you could feel, a buffer against a bad paycheck or a hard winter. Your grandmother could put a full dinner on the table from the pantry alone. No emergency trip required. We keep almost nothing on hand now and order dinner to the door at a premium 3 nights a week. The full pantry was a form of insurance that also happened to lower every grocery bill. Number 7, the Passbook savings account. There was a small booklet, and it was almost holy. The Passbook savings account meant you physically walked into the bank, handed the teller your little book, and watched them stamp in your new deposit and your interest, line by line, in ink. You could hold your savings in your hand and see it grow. That physical record did something a screen never will. It made saving real, tangible, almost emotional. Children were brought in to open their own accounts with $1, learning young that money set aside became more money over time, all by itself. The interest was modest, but interest was not the whole point. The point was the habit, the ritual of the deposit, the pride of a fatter passbook. People saved because saving was visible, and saving was a virtue you could see stamped in a book you kept in a drawer. We have digital balances now that we barely glance at. They held a booklet that told the story of their own discipline, one stamped line at a time, and they were proud of it. Number 6, live on one income. Save the other. When both spouses worked, and more did as the decades passed, the sharpest families followed a quiet rule that built real wealth. They lived entirely on one income and saved the other. The whole household ran on his paycheck, the rent and the groceries and the car, and hers went straight into the bank, untouched, month after month. Or the reverse, whichever was steadier. They never let their lifestyle rise to swallow both checks, and that single decision separated the families who got ahead from the families who merely got by. It required living below what they could afford, driving the modest car and keeping the smaller house when they could have stretched for more. But that second income, saved for years, became the down payment on a home, the college fund, the retirement cushion. The trap they avoided is the one that catches everyone now. When you spend everything you earn, a raise just funds a bigger life, never a safer one. They banked the raise instead. One income lived on. One income saved. That was the machine. Number 5, the envelope system. At the start of the month, the cash came out and it went into envelopes. One for groceries, one for gas, one for the electric bill, the rent, the church collection, a little one for entertainment if there was room. Each envelope held exactly what that category was allowed for the month, and when an envelope was empty, that was it. You did not rob the grocery envelope to go to the movies. If the gas envelope ran thin by the 25th, you drove less. The system was brilliant precisely because it was physical and it was final. You could see your money shrinking in real time, feel the envelope getting light in your hand, and it forced 100 small, honest decisions a month. There was no overspending because there was nothing left to overspend. Your grandmother ran an entire household this way, and she never carried a balance, never bounced a check, never wondered where it all went. We have unlimited digital money now that feels infinite until the statement arrives. The envelopes never lied. When they were empty, you were done, and everyone knew it. Number 4, pay yourself first. Fourth pattern break, and this is the one the banks stopped teaching. The rule was almost sacred among the people who built quiet wealth. The moment a paycheck came in, before a single bill was paid, before a dollar was spent, you took 10% off the top and put it away, out of reach. You paid yourself first, ahead of the landlord, ahead of the grocer, ahead of everyone. Most people do the opposite. They pay every bill, spend what feels comfortable, and try to save whatever is left, which is almost always nothing. Our grandparents flipped it. They treated their own future like the most important bill of the month, the one that got paid first. No exceptions, even in tight months, even when it stung. 10% of every check gone into savings before it could be missed, compounding quietly for 30 years. That is how a factory worker on an ordinary wage retired with real money, while a higher earner who paid himself last retired with nothing. The math is not complicated. The discipline is, pay yourself first and everything else has to fit in what remains. Number 3, cash only. If you can't pay for it, you don't buy it. For a whole generation, debt was not a tool. It was a warning sign. Outside of a mortgage, and reluctantly a car, borrowing money for everyday life was seen as something close to shameful, a public admission that you had lost control. If you could not pay cash for it, you did not own it yet, and you waited until you could. Credit cards existed, but the old rule was to pay the balance in full, every single month, without fail, treating the card as a convenience, and never as a loan. Carrying a balance meant paying the bank for the privilege of spending money you did not have, and to them that was simply foolish. They had lived through the Depression or been raised by people who had, and they knew exactly how fast debt could swallow a family, so they stayed out of it. They saved for the couch, the vacation, the appliance, and bought it clean. We finance everything now, and the average household carries thousands in revolving debt that never quite goes away. They slept easier because they owed no one. That peace had a price they were willing to pay in patience. Number 2, pay the house off early. The mortgage was the enemy, and beating it was a family mission. The moment they could, our grandparents threw extra money at the principal, an extra payment a year, a lump sum from the tax refund. Anything to kill the loan faster. A 30-year mortgage paid off in 18 saved a staggering amount in interest. Tens of thousands of dollars that stayed in the family instead of flowing to the bank. And there was something deeper than the math. The day the mortgage was gone, the house was truly theirs, and no downturn, no layoff, no hard year could ever take the roof away. Some families held a mortgage-burning party, literally setting the paid document alight in the backyard. Neighbors gathered around because owning your home free and clear was one of the great achievements of a working life. That paid-off house then became the foundation of everything, the security in old age, the inheritance for the children. We refinance endlessly now and pull equity out like the house is an ATM. They spent their whole lives paying it down, and the freedom on the far side was worth every extra dollar. Number 1, live below your means. If you can't afford it twice, you can't afford it. And finally, in first place, the single rule that held all the others together: live below your means, not within your means, below them. Spend less than you earn, always, and let the gap between the two become the wealth that carries you through every hard season life throws at you. The sharpest version of it was a test they said out loud. If you cannot afford to buy it twice, you cannot afford it once. If a purchase would take everything you had, you were not ready for it, no matter how badly you wanted it. This was the philosophy underneath the change jar and the envelopes and the paid-off house. Never let your wants outrun your wallet. Keep your life smaller than your income, and the difference will quietly build into security, into freedom, into a retirement that does not depend on anyone's mercy. They drove the modest car and lived in the modest house on purpose, not because they had to, but because they understood that comfort is spending less than you make, and stress is spending more. Everyone chases a bigger life now, financed and fragile. They chose a smaller one they actually owned, and they slept like the debt-free do. These were not just habits. They were a whole way of seeing money that we quietly traded away for convenience and easy credit. Try one this week. Just one. The change jar, the 30-day rule, paying yourself first. Then tell me in the comments which rule your parents or grandparents swore by, because I want to know which ones we should have never let go. They knew something we forgot. Now you know it too.